There's something outstandingly dedicated about Hokusai. He doesn't shy away from things that are dangerous or that are challenging or that are controversial. And I think that's part of his heroism.
バリバリバリとこう雷に打たれた。それ以来、北斎はめきめきと頭角を現して世界的な石まで上り詰めたと言われております。
Hokusai is the person who invented modern art. He's the person who taught us that you don't need to stick within the tradition in which you were brought up. You don't need to follow the master. You can cut and paste and bring things together.
I must have first seen Hokusai prints when I was at the art school in Bradford. Their depiction of space, his way of looking at the world, appealed to me straight away. Hokusai saw that on a flat surface, everything is an abstraction, everything. I mean, I was inspired by Hokusai there.
From the time when I was 6 until I was over 80, not a day went by when I didn't take up my brush. And yet I still can't even paint a single cat. It won't come out as I wish.
Hokusai is born in Edo, which is what we now know as Tokyo, in the middle of the 18th century. It's the biggest city in the world, so it's a thoroughly commercial, thoroughly sophisticated place. A consumer society, if you like. He's born into the working class districts of Edo, and he's adopted into an artisan family.
Hokusai was born and lived for most of his life on the east bank of the Sumida River. And the Sumida River is a locus of transport, but also the river was turned over, particularly in the summer, to fireworks and big barges with banquets and partying. So I think Japanese people would have associated the Sumida River with pleasure.
Very young, he starts to get interested in drawing. By his account, from the age of 6, he was drawing things all the time. And he's born in the right place at the right time, a society with a huge hunger for sophisticated renditions of the world around them. And there's a huge demand for prints of the celebrities of the day.
In the city of Edo, the kabuki theatres and brothel district on the northern outskirts of the city were the subjects for the Floating World School, this huge popular school of art. It's a kind of joie de vivre, a mindset, which really got going in the middle of the 17th century. So by the time Hokusai is born in 1760, it's already more than 100 years old.
The Floating World really illustrates the world of downtown Edo. I mean, in the way that when we look at a Vermeer painting, we disappear into a Dutch world and we understand it through the painting. I think that's what we can do through these prints. For a minute, we can disappear into that world and understand a little bit about it. The process by which these prints were produced, there was a publisher, that was the person with the money, who knew which courtesan was really popular, which actor was really popular, and so the publisher would go to the artist and commission an image, and it would then be taken to the carvers, who carved the blocks, and when the blocks were finished, they were taken to the printers.
As a teenager, Hokusai apprentices to a woodblock cutter. So the first thing he does as an artist is learn how to cut the blocks. It's a very complex process.
The original drawing, which is on very thin paper, is reversed and actually glued down onto the blocks. And the carver then carves to reproduce that brushed line in wood. And that is the phenomenal skill of those carvers. One of the greatest challenges when you're trying to carve a brushed line in wood is how you imitate that part of the line where the ink is starting to run out, which is highly valued aesthetically in calligraphy. And these carvers are able to imitate that in wood. And very often they carve in the same direction that the line was actually brushed.
Then Hokusai entered the studio of an artist called Katsushika, who was right at the epicenter of the Floating World School of Popular Art. And Shunsho, his teacher, was doing thousands of color wood block prints of the kabuki actors, who were the superstars of popular culture of the day. So Hokusai's earliest published prints are very much in the style of his teacher.
Katsushika という役者絵があるのですが、それは北斎のデビュー作に近いものではないか、デビュー作ではないかとも言われているものでして、すごく小さな絵ではあるのですが、細かくそしてキレのある線で描かれていて。デビューにかける北斎の意気込みというものを感じ取ることができますので、とても好きな一枚です。
We do have a very early print from 1779 of a very famous actor, Segawa Kikunojo, the third generation in this particular acting lineage. The really interesting thing is that you have an actor in front of a partition, and then on the right of the actor we have a screen with waves. And of course water will become, throughout Hokusai's career, a preoccupation for him. He never abandons water or waves as a theme. So even in the first work that we have, we see some of what's to come.
When he was very young, he was very talented. I mean, prodigies are a bit rare in visual art. They're common in music, aren't they? But I mean, he was a little prodigy like Picasso or something.
While Hokusai was struggling to make ends meet, a man came and asked him to paint a picture for the boys' day. Hokusai immediately prepared red pigment and drew a picture of Shoki, the demon queller. The customer was very satisfied with the picture and paid the artist 2 gold ryo. This was the payment that ultimately made Hokusai confident that he could earn his living as an artist, and vowed to the Bodhisattva Myoken that he would succeed.
Hokusai's family belongs to a particular sect of Buddhism, but in fact, for Hokusai, the divinity who becomes enormously important is Myoken. Myoken is a Buddhist deity, if you like, a bodhisattva, associated particularly with the North Star. And at a certain point in his life, he renames himself by the name we know today, Hokusai. It means North Star Studio, actually.
It's the one point in the heavens that doesn't move, whereas the whole of the rest of the heavens move around it. So for Hokusai, it's a fixed point, which is a potential source of huge spiritual strength.
We do know that for Hokusai, Myoken is associated particularly with the Hoshoji temple, which still exists today. It still has a hall within it dedicated to Myoken. And Hokusai himself produces an image of this quite early in his career.
宇宙の中心、天の中心の北極星の化身の妙見様とご自身をこう同一化されまして、自分を通して妙見様のご加護のもと一生懸命絵を描かれたと。 一番初め北斎絵を描き始められまして、なかなか思い通り自分の絵を描くことができなかったようです。その時に21日間この柳島の妙見堂妙見様に立派な浮世絵師になりますようにと祈願をかけられました。その21日目の満願の日の帰り道に一点にわかに書き配りまして、バリバリバリと雷に打たれた、そして北斎田んぼに転げ落ちたという逸話がございます。それ以来北斎はめきめきと頭角を現して世界的な石まで上り詰めたと言われております。
He becomes acquainted with some very sophisticated cultural networks of men of wealth, men of taste. And in Edo at this time, you have these huge clubs of popular poets. They come together and they have these outrageous poetry parties where they compose what are called crazy verses. And it's Hokusai is one of the artists of choice who they then hire to do little beautiful designs to accompany their poems.
The first singing of the warbler is more impressive than listening to your parents' objections to getting up early on a spring morning.
Moving into the early 19th century, there's a new genre of popular illustrated literature that is really big. And Hokusai is working with the leading author of these adventure stories, an author called Takizawa Bakin, providing the illustrations. And these illustrated printed books are phenomenally popular.
日本の小説っていうのはほとんどが中国から影響を受けたものを日本の作家がアレンジしてストーリーを作るわけです。でそれを北斎絵描きさんに伝えて、その部分部分に、絵を描くわけですから。よほど理解力と腕が立たないと描けない。面白いことにこの北斎っていう方は非常に腕が描き方が卓越してたので作家を選ぶこともあるし、逆にその版元から北斎でないとこの挿絵は務まらないという指定があったりもしたようです。
Tamatomo let loose a whistling arrow aimed at a 10-foot rock shaped like a cactus. The rock split right down the middle, sending bits flying in all directions. A big chunk fell into the sea and spray shot up like the blow of a whale in the shallows. Waves struck back against the land and the ground shook.
結局これを一般的に手ずれって言いますけども、その当時の方々が、たくさんご覧になられた後ですね。
Oh my God, I can't believe you had to walk that far just to get to the end of all these volumes. Look at how many there are. To think that I did it all. In the early 1980s, I started catalog raisonné of Hokusai's prints. And by the end of the 1980s, compiled about 15,000 photographs and, in fact, doubled Hokusai's known work. But that was just the tip of the iceberg with Hokusai. My God, the guy's a genius, you know? He's really amazing. When Hokusai was 45, he came to the notice of the shoguns, the military governor of Japan. So the shogun put out the word that he'd like to have this artist do him a demonstration. But the leading painter of the day, Tani Bunsho, was also invited. And Tani Bunsho painted these breathtaking landscapes and mountains and things like that. And then it was Hokusai's turn. And he got this sheet of paper and he spread it out and he had a whole pot which was just blue ink. So he brushed this onto the length of this long sheet of paper. And people were just sitting there. The shogun was sitting there. Saying, what on earth is this all about? And so then he opened a basket and he took out a rooster and he dipped the rooster's feet in red ink and he then plopped the rooster along the length of this blue strip. And then when he finished doing that, they said, this is autumn leaves on the Tatsuta River, which is a famous subject of classical painting. And that took everybody's breath away.
His clever trick was a pure surprise to everyone present. Shizunro Buncho, who was sitting next to Hokusai, said, I could not keep my palms from sweating.
Hokusai にはやはり自分の絵を売らなきゃいけないということから来るショーマンシップっていうのかね、そういうものがあって。巨大な作品を描いてその後で米粒に米粒に絵を描いてみたいわゆる米粒画家子供のような人だったという面もあると思います。
When he was 50, he stopped doing a lot of the commercial prints that he did, and he just began traveling. And he went down to Nagoya for a while, and then this friend of his who was a pupil said, look, stay with me as long as you want. You know, here's materials, paint as much as you like, draw as much as you like. Then he invited a bunch of his friends for a party. And he said, tonight, Hokusai, you're going to do some drawings for my friends. People would call out subjects, and they'd say, how about doing a dragon? And he'd just draw a dragon. Or how about doing a prostitute, you know? And that carried on through the night. And a publisher who lived in that area thought this would make a great book to publish. And so they compiled all these things, and that was the first manga, which means random drawings. Enormously influential, and they really took off.
「私は18歳の時に初めて北斎漫画に会ってその虜になりました。以降45年以上現在でもまだ北斎漫画を集め続けております。私は今約1500冊持ってるんですね。5年ほど前から、突版さんと一緒にその私が持っている北斎漫画の一番いいものからをデジタルアーカイブ化しましていろんな方にその魅力をもっと知ってほしいということをしております。こんなことが書いてある。ただ日常のことじゃなくて歴史的なことも書いてある。動植物も書いてある。天候の言葉、あるいは妖怪やお化けも出てくる。でそうするといろんな意味でも今の漫画の本当に先取りをしてて原点と言っていいと思いますね。
Hokusai himself titled Hokusai manga. He used the word manga, but each illustration is quite different from modern manga.
It's a very good point. Hokusai's manga, when you look at it, it really draws you in, but there is no storyline. Whereas Hokusai's illustrated novels propels you through visually. So Hokusai's manga and Hokusai's illustrated novels, when taken together, can be seen as a foundation for contemporary manga. They're separate and they're different, but they all are incremental steps to getting what we have today as a fully line-driven narrative.
西は僕にとっては先生みたいなもので、大学の時には学部の時には毎日彼の絵を模写して線とかを学んでました。現代の日本に生きるアーティストとしてちゃんと見直さないといけないなっていう思いがあって、やっぱり模写をしたりとかしながら線一本だったりぼかし方だったりっていうのを学び取るようにしてます。彼の絵の中で北斎漫画とかを見るととてもユニークな人々っていうのは描かれてるんですけど、やっぱあれは自分が偉くなって人々に触れ合わなくなると描けない絵だと思うんですね。
He did observe all kinds of things, all kinds of people. I mean, the drawings are marvelous drawings. They're beautiful. I mean, he's always looking fresh. He's a great artist, Hokusai, a great artist, yeah.
Traditionally, Japanese people believe the zodiac cycle repeats every 60 years. So the big change comes when Hokusai turns 61. And there's a sense in which, if you live that long, you're born again. Your zodiac cycle is repeating, so you can, in a sense, start your life again.
60 for every Japanese person who should live that long was a marker. It meant that the first significant part of your life was finished. And that from now on, you had a whole different group of things that you should be attending to.
Hokusai's never happy with one name. He keeps on kind of ringing the changes. Once he's past 60, he becomes the old man crazy to paint. So the changes, the big changes, seem to correspond to changes in style, changes in interest. We can see him embarking on a new phase of artistic experimentation or growth. People think of Japan as closed during this period. It wasn't. The Dutch go up to Edo, now Tokyo, every year. They know that Hokusai is the biggest name in town. They commission paintings from him.
The big commission of his early to middle 60s came in 1822. Dutch merchants working in Japan commissioned Hokusai to do a series of paintings showing typical scenes of Japanese life, but they're absolutely unique for the very interesting hybrid style that he came up with, where there's deep sense of spatial recession within the picture, a deep European-style perspective system. It's also as if there is a single light source casting shadows in the picture. This is completely revolutionary in a Japanese context. So we've got Japanese scenes painted in this hybrid, halfway between Japanese and European style. There's an incredible scene where travelers are suddenly caught in a thunderstorm. There's a lightning flash across the back of the picture, and the figures are caught in this fitful light. It's almost like a strobe light with a really dark, thunderous sky behind. And again, this is really totally revolutionary in a Japanese context. Things seem to be going well. He has this major commission from the Dutch, which he successfully completes. But then, in the late 1820s, Hokusai seems to be hit by a succession of personal life challenges. He had a minor stroke of some kind. Then suddenly, in 1828, his second wife died. And he's constantly exasperated by the behavior of his grandson, running up huge gambling debts.
And Hokusai was continually paying off his debts. And so he got into debt. And finally, Hokusai lost his house and then took refuge in a temple. He hid out.
This spring, no money, no clothes, barely enough to eat. If I can't come to an arrangement by the middle of the second month, then no spring for me.
One of the key documents for visualizing Hokusai in his 80s is a drawing which was done by one of his pupils. Tsuyuki Kosho is his name, and it shows Hokusai and his daughter Oi in very humble rented dwellings. Hokusai has a heater quilt pulled over him, and Tsuyuki quotes Hokusai.
No matter who comes to visit, I never leave the heater. When I'm tired, I pick up the pillow beside me and go to sleep. When I wake from sleep, I pick up my brush and keep drawing.
The 1820s is clearly a difficult decade, but that recession from the world is a way of pulling himself together and pulling together the ideas that are going to become the triumph of his next decade, the 1830s, his 70s. And it's at this point that we begin to see the germ of what will become the 36 views of Mount Fuji.
Ever since earliest recorded times, Mount Fuji has been important to Japanese people. It's by far the largest physical feature in the Japanese islands and dominates completely central Japan and the area around it. It was celebrated in literature, but more importantly, perhaps for Hokusai, Fuji was always considered a deity. And the whole idea of the series 36 Views of Mount Fuji is to set up interesting pictures that make Mount Fuji the fulcrum of our world, the center of our universe.
Fuji 山はただの登山のための山じゃなくて、信仰の対象としての山であったと私は思っております。まるで座禅を組んでいるブッダみたいな不動の姿というふうにも取れるわけですね。富士山北斎はむしろそれを狙ったんじゃないでしょうか。
I think in the middle of his career, we can see his interest migrating. The human interest is there, but increasingly his eye is drawn to the landscape behind it. Hokusai is the guy who enables landscape within the Japanese artistic tradition. The first one who begins to focus on the landscape as landscape.
The Great Wave is undoubtedly Hokusai's most famous work by far. The Japanese title is Kanagawa Oki Namiura, which we translate as Under the Great Wave off Kanagawa. And we're out at sea in the Pacific Ocean, looking back under this great sudden storm wave towards Mount Fuji on horizon in the distance. Hokusai has digested the lessons of European perspective that he learned in his middle years, and now he's playing with that. Mount Fuji is the highest physical feature in Japan by far, and yet Hokusai has arranged the picture so that it appears that Mount Fuji is dwarfed by the great storm wave, and the foam and the water that comes off the great wave then starts to seem like snow falling onto the peak of Mount Fuji, which famously was always snow-covered all the year round. Many people don't notice at first that there are actually boats in this picture. There are 3 of these fast delivery boats, and they've taken delivery of a catch from the fishing fleet, and they're trying to deliver it as fast as possible to the fish markets in the center of Edo. And then suddenly this freak wave has come up, and the oarsmen are all cowering down. They've obviously made the decision to go straight through the wave rather than try and escape from it. So it's a huge drama, and these are very heroic people at work. It's typical of Hokusai to focus more on the world of working people than anything else.
We have a relationship being described between a very dynamic world of water and of human endeavor dwarfed by the energies of nature. Then in the middle we have Fuji, this unmoving thing, a still center to a world of change. Most of the prints in the 36 views have some kind of relationship between human activity and the mountain. So we see people in a landscape with their hats blowing off. People working in Edo itself. Hokusai is interested in the human world, he's interested in the natural world, he's interested in the spiritual world. Above all, he's interested in the relationship between these things.
You know, the sea is totally in charge of these little fragile boats. And so, however beautiful a Hokusai work is, it is this sense of awe in the face of nature that at once one is aware of. This curve of the wave, which I find to be the most difficult thing when painting the sea, is made from many curves, and the fact that that line changes adds to the movement of the wave. And I mean, what is exciting about it, of course, is that distilled moment before this wave is going to crash. Well, I see it in one of his earlier paintings, an early wave, which is pretty solid and static. I mean, it could be a building, really. It doesn't immediately say water. I mean, I think there were 20 years or something between these waves, and it's sort of earlier prelude leading up to, I mean, what has become the iconic image of Hokusai. That image of the great wave has entered not just my consciousness, but the world's consciousness, and so it's sort of inside one, and you're always up against it, like you're up against Rembrandt in a self-portrait.
I'm really coming to think that in this image particularly, Hokusai is inventing modern animation. The great wave is caught just at the moment where it's about to fall, and all of the little tentacles of foam are just caught in suspended animation, like the claws of an animal coming down, threatening these fishing boats. This, to me, is anticipating modern animated cartoons.
Disney animation, for example, is very similar. You've got a bold outline and very flat colour. And it's entirely probable that people who worked at Disney in the early days had seen Japanese prints, had possibly even seen the technique. And that aesthetic carried over into the early days of the films.
The Great Wave would have been printed from 4 planks of cherry wood. One side was the so-called key block, which would have printed the outlines and the text on the image. The rest of the blocks would have been left in relief to print each of the colours in succession. Hokusai would have been involved in making the decisions about what colours to print, including the brilliant Prussian blue pigment. But as the printing run wore on, the publisher and the printers would start to cut corners, and sometimes the colours would change. The audience for a print like this is anybody. If you had just more than the price of a double helping of noodles, you could buy a Great Wave in 1831. These are mass-produced, maybe as many as 8,000 impressions of this design printed at the time. It's an incredibly democratic art form. NHK, Japan's national broadcaster, has brought over special 8K cameras, and they're going to be filming in the most incredible detail. And therefore, we can blow things up and start to really appreciate the detail of these amazing works by Hokusai.
There's a level of detail that we're able to see that's beyond what we can see with our naked eyes. We begin noticing things that we had never noticed before when we've been looking at them for years and years in the flesh.
This is a treat.
Yes, it is. It sure is.
In Japan, interestingly enough, the most important print is not the Great Wave. The most important print is what we know as Red Fuji. Clearly in Japan, in the modern period, Fuji itself became the center of a very important set of ideas about national identity. You didn't want Fuji from a distance, you wanted Fuji in its glory.
Oh, God, look at that. Wow. Oh, that's astonishing.
What's happening here, I wonder? I'm seeing something like a wiping line.
Yes,
Are you
yeah,
seeing those
yeah,
kind of
no, I do.
horizontal? The top lines of these clouds have been fairly smoothly cut, whereas the bottom edge consistently has been abraded. He's using really abrasive leaf over rush. So you use it as a kind of sandpaper to give it, it's not a sharp line, it gives it a kind of fudged quality.
Yes, it couldn't be anything else.
It couldn't be anything else.
Yeah.
What an amazing effect.
Uh-huh. I mean, it's brilliant. It's a brilliant conception.
Because otherwise it would look totally dead.
Yeah.
And I suspect on all of the reproductions that are ever made, it probably is just a straight line.
What could that be? Nothing but surprises.
And certainly this is really large volume as well.
When I started really working on his art, I realized that what came to be known as Red Fuji, Hokusai never meant to be red. In fact, he probably would have been scandalized if he saw it looking like it looks in these pictures here, you know. But I was visiting a Swiss collector in Basel, a Dr. Walter Wehrli, who had a small collection, and we were looking at his prints. And then he said, now I have one other print I'd like to show you, but I have to apologize for it because it's so faded. And then he pulled out this print, which is in the albums here, and I saw what he meant because the colors were very light in the sky and on the mountain itself, and it was a very different kind of tonality and a very different effect than on all the impressions I had ever seen in my life, which were hundreds. But then I looked and noticed that there's a little penumbra of blue around the tip of the mountain, and I realized that that had to have been printed specially from a specially inked and carved block, and it was intentional, it wasn't accidental. And so then I looked more carefully, and I realized there's nothing accidental about the print at all, and that that was the earliest impression in the world, and that that was what Hokusai saw and meant to be seen. It was harder to print for various reasons, and the publishers, who weren't very scrupulous, they were just cranking them out, and so everybody got caught up with Red Fuji, and it was enormously popular in his lifetime and afterwards. What he was in fact revealing was the quality of light just before dawn. I mean, it was like a revelation. What this technology has given me a chance to discover is that the pink Fuji is even more complex than I had even dreamed of, because I've been used to thinking that these little tree-like shapes at the base of the mountain were all printed from one block, and in fact they're printed from 3 different blocks inked with very subtly different shades of blue, and so it gives the whole forest a very lively quality, which is extraordinary.
We think of it as such a monumental and abstracted design, but actually there's so much more subtlety in there. Up here, you see these little triangles of pale green along the slope of Mount Fuji. Never ever noticed that before. But it's clear that all of this had been very carefully calculated, and it gives life. I mean, it's almost like the trees are shimmering, aren't they? It's
they
like,
are.
They're alive.
The discovery of this new version of the Red Fuji is a wonderful example of how something that has become a conventional icon of Japanese art in general is actually not what Hokusai had in mind at all. So what I was able to say to the Swiss collector was, Walter, this is not a faded imprint. This is the best one I've ever seen. Thrilling moment for both of us.
The 36 views of Mount Fuji did prove incredibly popular, and then straight on from that, they start to issue even more Fuji designs, the famous 100 views of Mount Fuji. And yet further opportunity for Hokusai to explore Fuji from all sides, in all weathers, from all vantage points. And in fact, some of the compositions in this book are incredibly eccentric. He's deliberately stretching the limits of composition to pay homage to the mountain. At the back of Volume 1 of 100 Views of Mount Fuji is like a little potted autobiography. This is Hokusai looking back at his career up to this point, up to his mid-70s, basically dismissing it.
From the age of 6, I had the desire to copy the form of things. And from about 50, my pictures were frequently published. But until the age of 70, nothing I drew was worthy of notice. At 73 years, I was somewhat able to fathom the growth of plants and trees and the structure of birds, animals, insects and fish. Thus, when I reach 80 years, I hope to have made increasing progress, and at 90 to see further into the underlying principle of things, so that at 100 years I will have achieved a divine state in my art. And at 110, every dot and every stroke will be as though alive.
Hokusai is saying, well, you know, I've been pretty mediocre, but I've done a lot of work. But you haven't seen anything yet until you've seen what's going to happen when I go forward from this.
He always thought he'd get better. Well, the Chinese have a saying, painting is an old man's art, meaning you should get better because you know more and you've more experience of doing it. I like to think I'm like that, actually. People say I've gone off, but I don't think so.
There is a number of quite informal self-portraits by Hokusai from different stages in his career, and he's beguilingly informal in the way he depicts himself. It's not a pompous view at all. In the early period, when he's working a lot on the popular literature, he comes in almost as a tiny cartoon character in some of the pictures. But later in life, thinking of his 80s, he does a little lightning sketch of himself pointing, gesticulating quite excitedly to something outside the picture and seems to be talking to somebody at the same time. And then text above the self-portrait is apologizing for not producing what the publisher wants and saying that he's sending instead some old drawings, which Hokusai did in his 40s, so 4 decades earlier. And although he was an immature artist at that time, maybe there's something amongst these drawings that you can use.
He trundled around for his entire life with a cart that had his archive in it. All of his drawings, all of his copies of paintings that he'd seen. But in 1839, his house caught fire. He jumped out the window with his brush, and his daughter jumped out the window with her brush. But that cart was burned.
Hokusai rushed out of the house with only a painting brush in one hand. His daughter Oi immediately followed him. They lost all their possessions, clothes and painting materials. They were nearly naked and looked like homeless beggars.
And from that time on, he didn't do any more drawings, he didn't do any more prints to speak of, and his life took a radical change.
In Hokusai's 80s, and certainly in the last 3 years, 88, 89, 90, it's almost exclusively paintings that he's working on.
I mean, he was 88, he was going for it. He was just like, I'm going to do something new. And he at that point couldn't care whether anybody else notices or not. He was going to go as far as he could for as long as he could.
In his last years, we have a sequence of paintings where he's trying to bring the world as we know it to life on the page. He's trying to reach beyond the surface of things to the life of things. And in the British Museum, there's a wonderful scroll of a duck. The duck is actually swimming on the page.
It's astonishing, just astonishing.
I'm so much more aware of individual strokes.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Because you can see there's lots of small black accents, which are separate strokes.
Yeah.
Completely separate strokes.
And different colors.
Black on top of grey.
Yeah. It's a wonderful, wonderful painting. And when I look at the feathers, you can just see that they're varying thicknesses of line. They're spaced not evenly, not uniformly. I mean, there's just a rawness about the detail in that painting. Nobody but he could have drawn the ducks.
僕は特にその絵師が直接もう最初から最後まで描くこの肉筆画っていう方に少し興味があって、今日は葛飾北斎のマガモ図を復元したわけですけど、自分が最初に思った以上に今日時間がかかってしまったと思ってるんですけど、写真を見ても分かるんですけど、こう絵の具の層の重層といいますか、こうレイヤーがやっぱ複雑といいますか、やっぱ最初の段階のこの、今日やってこう薄墨をかなりこう薄い彩色を何度も何度も繰り返してやったと思うんですけど、このマガモの質感を出すまでに相当こう手を入れてるなっていう印象はありましたね。その古い言い方だと起因制度っていう言葉があるんですけど、特に今回のこのカモの起因制度で一番分かりやすいのはやっぱりこの頭の部分がすごい今日かなり苦戦したと言いますか、なんですけど、やっぱりこう単純なベタ塗りではない、やっぱりその絵の具がその毛並みになるというか、その質感を表すというか、絵の具が絵の具ではなくなるところまでやっぱりちゃんとこう考えて描いてる感じがします。版画だとどうしてもその筆で描くものではないので、どうしてもその細かさの限界っていうのもあると思うんですけど、特にこのマガモの絵なんか見ますと、やっぱりこれとかのこの毛のふっくらとした質感っていいますかね、そういったものはやっぱりこの肉筆画じゃないと追求できないもので、やっぱりそこは版画とは違う、なんかやっぱ北斎がこの肉筆画をやるっていう時にはやっぱ気持ちを切り替えて、やっぱりこういつものこの版画ではできないことをとにかくやりたいっていう気持ちがある気がしますね。
北斎のアニミスティックなものの見方の代表だと思いますけども、鉱物であるか動物であるか植物であるか、それにかかわらず全てのものに生命が宿るというのが アニミズムの考えですけども、まさに北斎の描くものを見るとそういう印象が強いですね。
I think that, like many people in Japan, he had completely internalized Buddhism. It wasn't a set of beliefs, it was a way that you lived your life, and he saw it all around him. The way that he drew birds in the sky, the way that he drew plants. It isn't just a person who is just sitting in front of a plant and transcribing it or sketching it out. It was a person who digested it, made it their own, internalized it, and had become the plant or the fish or whatever it was.
When I'm looking at Hokusai's late paintings, they're the most incredible artworks. I mean, technically they're extraordinary, but it's not just a tour de force. There's a vital consciousness inhabiting those creatures, those figures, that is looking out at me and wanting to engage with me. And that just fills you with energy.
The Chinese say you need three things for painting: the hand, the eye, and the heart. Two won't do, which is, I think, very, very good. That.
It's a spectacular painting.
Absolutely incredible.
Both of them are. What a pair.
I mean, there's no doubt about it that they were meant to be hung together as a pair because we have the same mounting, same size. Dragon and a tiger is a traditional subject in East Asian art, and they have pretty much identical signatures from Hokusai's 90th year. The dragon is coiling up out of a tornado that it's making itself and staring out at us with this incredibly inhabited expression. Hokusai's painted dragons dozens of times at this point in his career, but at 90, in the final months of his life, God knows how he did it, but he cracked it. We felt when we were looking at images of this painting that it must have been painted in reverse, basically starting with the color of the paper, which is the highlights all over the composition, and then working back through a succession of ever darker shades of gray ink until you finally get to the black. So you're working in reverse. Hokusai has mentally worked all of this out before he even touches the brush to the paper. So underneath all of these individual dragon scales is a line which has completely different character from its neighbor. He's just totally incapable of painting the same line twice, but always remembering to leave at the edge of the spines the unpainted paper as the highlight. You can't make any mistakes with this kind of painting. It's not an oil painting where you could rub something out and try it again. Once you put the brush to paper, you're committed. I just full of awe. How did he do it? In 1849, he was renting a lodging from a temple called Henjo Inn, doing the paintings of his final few months. He died at the end of the 4th month of his 90th year, so there's just a few months when the paintings which are signed aged 90 must have been done. And these include the sublime painting of the dragon flying into the sky around Mount Fuji and going off up into the heavens.
It's glorious.
Which is rightly regarded as one of the most sublime late Hokusai works. It's so moving because he's bringing together the imagery of such a long career.
You take one look at the painting, and what jumps out at you is this startling, almost frightful oversimplification of Mount Fuji. Then, to the top of the painting is a smudge which you induce is clouds, and then in the smudge there's some kind of a figure. But then you see it's a dragon floating up and drifting up above the mountain into the sky and disappearing. And then you think, well, son of a gun, you know? Well, that's almost like an epitaph for himself. He's saying, so long, you know, enjoy my work. You know, you'll really get a lot out of these pictures if you get into it like I did.
In the little inscription that Hokusai puts next to his signature, he says, I'm aged 90. I was born in a dragon year. I'm painting this on a dragon day in my 90th year.
Hokusai さんのお父さんお母さんが正教寺のお檀家だったもの。その関係でHokusai さんも正教寺のお檀家ということで、はい、うちの方に埋葬させていただいております。南宋院清Hokusai故寺水前増上菩提南無阿弥陀仏南無阿弥。私もHokusaiさんと同じような道を歩みたい。自分が好きな道、信じた道をまた私も歩いていきたいなと思います。90歳まで歩きたいと思います。
There's something so outstandingly dedicated about Hokusai and about his stalwart approach to what he was doing. It's sort of incomparable. I think that he was one of the great heroes. I cried. He never gave up. He kept experimenting. He kept doing new things. He just felt that he had.
If heaven will afford me 5 more years of life, then I'll manage to become a true artist.